I think we can go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. We have an exciting presentation for you this evening. We're calling this Pathways and Progress. This is really about us reviewing the Cheltenham School District school performance data. And so I'm so happy that everyone was able to join this evening. Before we get started, I did want to just welcome and thank all of the UPG board members who are online and have worked tirelessly behind the scenes, not just for this meeting, but for pretty much every event and all of the plans that we work on throughout the year. We have a heavy lift and we do a lot. We are a small but mighty team. So I just want to thank you to all of the members of the board. Also, a special thank you to both Dr. Scriven and Dr. Savage for all of their support and help in putting this call together. They were nothing but supportive and encouraging when we approached with the topic. And we're hoping that it can be a very informal and conversational discussion as Dr. Savage reviews the Cheltenham school performance data. So with that said, we can get started. I would like to just welcome and introduce Dr. Savage. She has a very impressive bio, and I wanted to specifically read her bio because I know she's rather humble and would not say all of these things about herself. So with that, ShaVon Savage, Master of Science, Education, and Juris Doctorate. With 25 years of experience in the K through 12 education space, ShaVon Savage served as the Assistant Superintendent at the Cheltenham School District beginning July 1st, 2024, and moved into the Director of Teaching and Learning role in January 2026. A fierce advocate for education, Dr. Savage is a 2019 Senior Fellow in the Neubauer Fellowship in Educational Leadership Program and a 2025 Penn State Abington Alumni Achievement Awardee. She brings a collaborative approach to her work. She advocates for the achievement and advancement of all students through the development of school leaders and their teams. She possesses a deep understanding of how school management systems fit together to support the smooth operation of a successful school. She believes if school leaders are appropriately supported, they will be able to focus on supporting teachers and all students will benefit. Prior to coming to Cheltenham School District, Dr. Savage worked in education and law. She served as a teacher, school improvement coordinator, principal, and district level administrator at district and charter schools. After graduating from Penn Law, she was an associate at the law firms of Whistler, Pearlstein, and Blank Rome, working in education, law, and public finance, respectively. Most recently, she served as an associate professor of practice at Temple University's College of Education and Human Development and founded Mosaic School Supports, a consulting firm, coursework, and coaching firm focusing on building school management and operational capacity in leaders and education entities. In the School District of Philadelphia, Dr. Savage held a number of administrative roles, including Deputy Superintendent of Academic Service, Deputy Chief of Specialized Services, and Principal at Henry C. Lee Elementary School. From 2012 to 2014, she was the administrator for special student programs for the Lower Merion School District. She's also been a classroom teacher at Discovery Charter School, Penn Alexander Elementary School, Mastery Charter Schools, and Shaw Middle School. Dr. Savage, who holds a letter of eligibility for superintendency and principal, pre-K through 12, a mid-level mathematic 6 through 9, and elementary K through 6 certifications, graduated from Penn State Abington in 2000 with a bachelor's in business administration and a minor in English. In 2002, she graduated from the University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Education with an Master of Science in Education before earning her law degree from Penn's Carey School of Law in 2007. She is a resident of Mount Airy and she lives there currently with her son. Welcome, Dr. Savage.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm
So,
excited to be here tonight.
yes, we're excited to have you, and we're excited about the topic. We hear a lot about school performance data, and we really wanted to put together this call to sort of unpack. We see numbers a lot, but to unpack for parents exactly what those numbers mean and what are most meaningful. So before we get started with the presentation, I wanted to ask you just a few questions. So first, what data is currently available and how can parents access that data?
There is a ton of data available, and I think sometimes it is hard for parents to wrap their heads around and their hands around all of the data that is out there. Honestly, school districts are governmental entities, and we are required by law to collect and keep a number of different data points, a number of which we'll share tonight. But the one data source that I think is going to be most relevant and effective for parents from the district-wide lens is our Future Ready data. And that Future Ready data is actually collected by the state of Pennsylvania every year. And they refresh that data based upon metrics that they keep consistently. So I will share with people how to actually get to that site. And also, as related to your own individual child or children, the school district has a platform called LinkIt that we utilize for capturing all of our students' individual academic data. So any screener that they have taken, their PSSA scores, their common assessment scores, all are in LinkIt. Now, this is different than Power School. Power School is where we keep student grades. LinkIt is more for this high stakes testing that we do on a regular basis, to really measure whether or not students have learned what we intended to teach them, and also to for student data that is demonstrative of how they compare to their same age peers.
Okay, that's super helpful. So, we don't have an official polling question, but I do want this to be very interactive. So, I'm going to ask you all if you're familiar already with the Future Ready PA Index, please drop a thumbs up in the chat. If you're already familiar with the Future Ready PA Index, drop a thumbs up. If you're not familiar, maybe a thumbs down or a no. Okay, I see some thumbs up. Okay, I see a thumbs down. Good to know. Good. Okay, so a variety of answers there. And I think that's good because that means there's a lot for us to learn. So, with that, I do want to ask you, Dr. Savage, in terms of the Future Ready PA Index, what data do you think is most important for parents to know and understand? And I'm sure you're going to share some of that.
Yes. There is district level data, and they call it fast facts. And that is really our demographic data around how many students we have, how many students of color we have, our special education and gifted numbers, our geographic boundaries, and a lot of demographic data just around our students. Then you can drill down a level and really look at individual schools. We now have 6 schools in the school district, but we have had 7 up until this year. So you'll find that there is actually a web page for Elkins Park as well. And on those pages, the school specific pages, you will find fast facts, but you will also find very specific achievement, attendance, and growth data that I will take everyone through this evening. So you can kind of get a sense of where your particular school is. And there is another piece of Future Ready that's really helpful. There's a mechanism by which you can compare schools. So all of that is available, and we will make sure that this presentation in particular is placed on the UPG website, because we have embedded links in this presentation so that families can really explore what is available.
Great. That all sounds great. Okay, and before we dive in, what what about parents that maybe already are looking at the Future Ready Index? Maybe they have gotten their feet wet. Are there anything for those just complete data nerds that you think would be good if they want to go even deeper into the data?
Absolutely. On the Future Ready Index now, you'll see a like right to the right of some data points, there's a little graph there. And if you click the graph, it will actually give you trend data for a number of years. So you'll be able to see how the data has changed over time.
Okay, that sounds good. I think that's a good start. Okay, with that, I think we can dive into the data.
No, absolutely. So first and foremost, these are the questions that you just presented, and we will actually go through each of these questions in turn. And if I do speak fast, it's because we do have a lot to cover. But I just wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to not just look at the data, but also for you as, constituents and families in the district to explore some of this data and get some important links for yourselves. So we're going to start with what data is available and how can families access it. But first, I just wanted to introduce my team over in Central Administrative Offices so you know who we are. Obviously, I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning, but we have three supervisors within the Department of Teaching and Learning now. Dr. Pimental is our Supervisor of STEM and Gifted. His real title is actually the Supervisor of Innovation and Enrichment because we are starting to think prospectively about how we're educating our students and how we're framing the language that we are using to describe their pathways. We do have two supervisors that specifically support curriculum and instruction, Ms. Gurman and Ms. Ferraro. Director Charlene Collins is on this call as well. And similar to me, she is a director, but she has school services. So she supports the non-instructional core classes, the non-core instructional classes, meaning your encore classes, your music, your art, your library, world language. And she has a supervisor as well that supports with instructional technology, Miss Flood. So if you see us around, that's who we are. We are kind of the core that supports curriculum and instruction throughout the school district as we move through building. So, what data is available and how can families access it? So we just talked a little bit about the Future Ready Index, and the Future Ready Index has been around for a number of years at this point. But the federal government, the U.S. Department of Education, has an act. It's called the Every Student Succeeds Act, and it is the child of No Child Left Behind, and it requires every state to have a plan in place that delineates the different metrics that it is going to use to really measure school growth and school progress. So from that law has blossomed Pennsylvania Department of Education's Future Ready Index. And our Future Ready Index measures a number of different things to give a full picture of how schools are doing. So, what kind of information can you find on Future Ready? As I said a little earlier, there are district wide and then school specific data on this data warehouse. So, there's district fast facts, and those district fast facts really give you just some of the demographics, some of the percentages, so you get a good picture of who the district is. And then you have school fast facts, which are specific to the demographics of the school and also some school performance metrics. I see a hand raised.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Are you showing or sharing your screen or not?
I am.
Am I missing it? It's probably me. I'm
Are
not
you
seeing
just
it.
seeing the people on the call?
Yeah, that's all I'm seeing. It's probably
Okay,
me.
if you yeah, if you go to the
Yeah.
upper left-hand corner, now it may look different because I'm facilitating, but in the upper left-hand corner, it says Zoom Workplace, and you can select, there's a drop-down arrow, you can select meeting or ShaVon Savage's
There you
screen.
go.
Do
Yep,
you see
got it.
that? Thank you for
Yep.
actually bringing that
Yeah.
up because I didn't realize that others weren't seeing it. So
Now, can everybody else see the screen too?
Yes.
Yes.
perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Dix, for bringing that up. All right. So The kind of data that you actually can find in the Future Ready Index, if you select a school, you'll find that there's three categories of data that will pop up for you. So you will see that there are state assessment measures, there are on-track measures, and then there are college and career measures. Now, the state assessment measures are going to speak to those high-stake tests that our children take. So the PSSAs and the Keystones. The on-track measures are going to speak to attendance and also how our students that are English language learners are doing as they're progressing through their programs. And the last measure is college and career readiness, and that's really whether or not students are achieving certain benchmarks that are set forth by these career readiness standards that the Pennsylvania Department of Education has promulgated. So we're going to delve a little bit into the state assessment measures first. The state assessment measures will actually break down even further and give you three kind of buckets. So the first bucket is around students that are scoring proficient and advanced on these tests. So if it's an elementary school, you will see it's related to the PSSA as well as our middle school. At the high school level, it'll be related to the Keystone. Now, the PSSA is something that all of our children take unless they're opted out in grades 3 through 8. The Keystone is an end of course exam for three major courses that the state has deemed important and required for students to take in order to get out of high school. And those three courses are Algebra 1, Biology, and English 10. So if you have high school kids, just know that they're going to have those three tests over their 9th and 10th grade years and that they need to pay attention to those. You will also see that there's annual growth expectations, and that growth metric is actually put together by the state using a very, very complicated set of formulas. But the idea is they want to see that students are growing academically in a full academic year so that they don't get left behind. So for example, if you're in the third grade and you only learn half of the third grade material, obviously you're going to be a half a grade behind when you go into fourth grade. These actual growth measures are put in place to really ensure that we are paying attention to students growing and learning what they should as related to the grade that they are in. And last but not least, advanced on state assessments. And that's just how many students have placed advanced on, the PSSA or the Keystone. And it's a nice measure to see whether or not we are keeping proficient students proficient or whether we are pushing them further. So you'll also see these on-track measures when you actually get into the depth of it. This is that second bucket. These are these on-track measures. English language growth and attainment. We have seen an increasing number of students in Cheltenham School District in recent years that are English language learners. So that data is becoming more and more important for us because as a public school system, we provide to our English language learners really specific instruction to help them learn English. So we want to see that they are growing in their ability to speak English and then they're actually attaining a fluid sense of English at some point. The other thing that is really big in this bucket is attendance. And attendance is a big deal because obviously, if children are not in school, they can't learn what we're presenting in the classroom. So the state does monitor our attendance across all of our 6 schools, and they do so on a regular basis. And then there's early indicators of success. The Pennsylvania Department of Education chose these two particular metrics to determine whether or not students are on track in reading and then in math. And for reading, it's grade 3 PSSA scores. And in math, it's grade 7 math scores. Because if students in grade 7 in particular have, hit proficiency, it better prepares them for algebra, whether it's in 8th grade or in 9th grade. Next, we're going to move into that last bucket. That last bucket is around college and career readiness. And there are a number of different metrics in this bucket. So you'll see that it is not just about career standards, because we actually teach students based upon a set of career standards. They have a unit just about every grade from grades 3 all the way through 12. And there's different benchmarks that they have to meet in order for them to be ready for post-secondary career success. We also look at our high school graduation rate, and that's the percentage of students that actually are graduating on time. We look at industry-based learning. So anybody that is familiar with our CTE, Career Technical Education programs over at Eastern, there is a measure for those as well. Next is rigorous courses of study. And by rigor, they're looking at honors classes and AP courses. And then last but not least, post-secondary transition to school, military, or work. Do we know where our students are going, and are they prepared to go into one of those three categories when they leave us with their diploma? So moving from district lens, where we look at the district as a whole, to parent lens. As a parent, your child's data goes into the aggregated bucket that the state actually looks at. But what you want to be interested in is what your individual child or children are doing. And we actually use LinkIt to capture all of that data, because we wanted to have a single place where families could go to see their students' longitudinal data from the time they start with us to the time that they leave us. So what kinds of data will you be able to see in LinkIt? And I'm going to start, I'm sorry about the alphabet soup, but I'm going to explain what each of these are. And I'm sure you're familiar with quite a few of these. But the first one is our fast bridge screening. So we give a universal screener, meaning we give this screener to all of the children for the most part, unless they have a specialized educational plan that exempts them from this screener. And we give it at the beginning of the year in September, and in the middle of the year, usually late December into January, and then at the end of the year, depending upon where the PSSAs occur. So this year they will have it in March. And that screening actually compares them and their scores to a national data set. There's a lot of kids from all over the country that take this screener, and everybody's data goes into this bucket. And then we kind of figure out where kids are as compared to a set of skills that we know all of these children should have at a particular age level. So it's really helpful for us as a district, because if we see that a student is behind at the beginning of the year, we can plan for interventions and support. If we see that a kid is ahead at the beginning of the year, we want to keep them ahead. So it's a really nice way for us to really get individualized data around these children so that we can plan for their education. From there, you will see IXL benchmarks. So we have all of our schools use IXL in various assorted ways. And actually, not all of our schools, K-5 uses IXL. And IXL is actually an online adaptive program, which means it provides practice and support for students based upon where the student actually is. And then it scaffolds them into the next skill and where they're supposed to get to. So it's been a really nice tool for us, because we actually can give students different pathways to get support and help that they can utilize outside of the school setting as well. We're a one-to-one district, and for our students in second grade moving forward, they bring Chromebooks home so that they can actually use IXL and do homework and so on and so forth. The next one is iReady, and iReady is really more specific to our special education students that receive learning support. We use iReady as another mechanism to provide targeted support for students based upon their IEPs. And then there's the other information that are high stakes tests that you will see in LinkIt. PSSA results, Keystones, ACTs, SATs, AP exams, all of that goes into LinkIt as well, so that all of that data is in one place. So I'm going to open this up because there is a website, and I'm going to drop the actual website into the chat so that if you have the capacity to do so right now, you can actually access this website. We actually have LinkIt parent support right on our website. And this webpage in particular will tell you not just what I told you, but also as you scroll down, it provides you a link here for directions on how to get into LinkIt. And it will bring up this parent login. And it also gives you how to, there's a link here around requesting support. So if you find that you can't get into LinkIt, you can click this link here, and there's a form that you can fill out, and someone from the Office of Education or the Communications Office will reach out to you to really support you in accessing all of this data. So I'm going to click this link here just so you can see what the directions look like. And the directions actually link you into a Google document that you can print out. You can save so that you can do this over and over again. And you'll get a unique registration code. If you have not already gotten one, then you can actually, again, request it through that support link right here. But when you click on the actual link to get into the page, you will see exactly this, and you'll be able to sign in with Google, and you'll be able to go in and actually see your students' data. There's also down at the very bottom a 9-minute tutorial that is actually a video. And the video will walk you through exactly what it looks like so that you have a sense of what the inside of the platform looks like and how you can navigate it. So all of that to say, the resources are out there and available for you. And if you need support at any point in time accessing it, you can always reach out through that form. But I will encourage you as well. Reach out to your principal, to your teacher, to your curriculum instruction and assessment teacher leader in the building. There are people in your schools as well that can help you with this because many of our teachers utilize this as well. And all of our teachers use it for common assessments.
Dr. Savage, I do want to just ask now, how many of the folks on the call have accessed the LinkIt portal already? How many of you have are aware of LinkIt and have accessed it? And you can again just drop a thumbs up or a thumbs down in the chat if you don't mind. Good. Okay, so again, a mixed bag. This is good. Good to see. Okay, I think this is super helpful. I will say that I have never been in LinkIt, but I will be going in now. So,
And many of the school districts in Montgomery County and in the suburban tri-state area, five county area, actually use LinkIt. So this is something that's good to get familiar with because it does really become the warehouse for your students' data.
I remember saving all the printouts, as my kids were getting PSSA and trying to keep them all in a folder. So to have them all at a glance, I think is a great thing. Okay, we can continue.
I saw some hands go up and down. Were there any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So for LinkIt, this is new to me. I've never been kind of sent this way for my child's information. I'll lower my hand here. So is this something that every parent should have? Like, so Power School, they're sending links, say, hey, Power School, here are your grades. Should the same thing be done with LinkIt? Because that hasn't been done. That's why you have a mixed bag of this thumbs up, thumbs down. And I'm fairly, involved as a parent. So is my wife. And this is the first time I've heard about LinkIt, which is a little troubling.
I would agree with you. I will send an actual communication out district wide around LinkIt. Because last year when I got here, we did the same thing for Power School. So I blasted out the communication for Power School. And also, last year was the first time that the K to 5 parents actually had access to Power School. So part of what is occurring, and this is more towards the end of the presentation, but as we are getting better and better about not just the data warehousing and where information is, but the links between the information, we will be sending more and more information out to parents around how to access it. And it is also our intent, especially as we're moving into the 26-27 school year, to have more nights like this and to actually do them at the school level because some of these platforms are newer. And I think it's important for all families to have access to them and to know and understand how to get into them. So thank you for raising that because this is incredibly helpful to me as well. Because sometimes, you can't really tell whether it's reaching the people that it's intended to reach.
That's a very good point. And Dr. Savage, I don't know if you know offhand. Um, I'm always curious about Power School and even LinkIt Access. From the parent side, we get a report. We can get a report every week, right? That's emailed to us. Are you guys able, and maybe you don't know the answer off the top of your head, but I'm curious if you're able to actually go in from the back end and see how many parents are accessing the tools on a regular basis, because I think that would be super helpful to know. And if there are gaps maybe in certain schools versus others, and that would allow you maybe to be able to communicate better. I don't know if that's possible. It seems like it should be, but again, not sure.
I know we can do it for Power School. I'm not sure if we can do it for LinkIt, but I think it's a good practice to look at what we call usage data, who's going in and actually using it. And it probably would be, I can reach out to the vendor and see if there's a way for us to do that, because I think you're right. It is quite possible that we have groups of parents who are very astute in this and groups of parents who aren't. And how do we close that gap and remediate that?
Yeah, I agree. And then I just realized Colleen had a question. Is this only used in public schools?
I am not sure. I can't speak to the private school experience because I think private schools they set their own systems up and they don't have the same reporting requirements that public schools do. So I think that that would be really based upon each independent school and the systems that they might have chosen.
Okay, that's all the questions I see in the chat for now.
I see Donna has a question as well.
Hi, I just have a quick question. As you mentioned in Linkit, they upload certain assessments. You mentioned common assessments. Is that required for is it a requirement for teachers to upload common assessments in Linkit? Because I only seen it one time.
It will be during the 26-27 school year. Over the
Thank
past well, we're in one of the school years, but last year, during the 25-26 school year, we actually started building common assessments. And just so everybody on the call is familiar with what a common assessment is, I think the language that we previously used in Cheltenham might have been a benchmark assessment. But a common assessment is an end of unit test well, that actually is aligned to what the students have been taught, so we can determine whether or not the students learned what we intended them to. So think about your, chapter 5 math tests. Those are the tests that we are now starting to upload and put into LinkIt, because we've been trying to normalize what those tests and those units look like across grades, across subjects, and across schools. That way, your student is ensured that they are learning the same thing at Myers that they would be learning at Wincote. And that is a very long-term process. We are deep in it right now. We do have a curriculum cycle where we are going through and reviewing the assessments, reviewing the actual textbooks we use, reviewing the technology platforms that we use, so that we can be sure that we are selecting the instructional materials that are aligned and are appropriate for our students.
I think that's a very good point, Dr. Savage. I know I pulled some data from the PA the Future Ready Index on our 4 elementary schools, and hopefully, if we have time, I would like to share some of that. But I think the ability to standardize and have consistency across the the schools is probably a great thing. You can see from the numbers that some of these kids are doing their own thing. And so I think to have that, would be a big help. So, and then there's another question in the chat. How often do the teachers see this information?
Regularly. Each of the teachers has their own login as well, and they are able to go in and access this. And we also have something called a fingertip report for each individual teacher so that the teachers can go each individual student, so the teachers can go in and see a student dashboard for each of the students in their class. So it is our expectation that the teachers actually know how to use this and that they are going in and taking a look at the data that is there for their students. Education shouldn't be about feeling and gut. It should be about the actual data that is in front of you.
Okay, that's the last question I see in the chat, and I don't see any other hands raised at this time. Oh, do these results turn into action items?
That's an excellent question. Sometimes they can. We have now a multi-tiered support system in place where we identify students that might need intervention or enrichment, and they receive a plan and some specific instruction to them, whether it's through small group or sometimes individualized support. And a lot of times, the data that's in LinkIt is part of the larger picture that we utilize to build those plans. Because, kids have talents that are not manifested through data points. Attendance might be a piece of this that we have to look at. There's a number of different measures that we'll look at to determine whether or not a student actually needs an MTSS plan. And once we have determined that a student might need that level of support or enrichment, then a plan is built and we specifically state in that plan who's providing the support and how. Oh, there's 2 questions in the chat now.
Yes. So the first one, good evening, Dr. Savage. 2 questions. What is the school expectation for distribution for report cards? Are they mailed or should we now expect to access them through PowerSchool?
So that's a great question as well. Families should receive at the K-5 level in particular an emailed report card. At the secondary level, which is 6th through 12th grade, you go into PowerSchool to actually get the report card.
Okay. And then the second question, are there options for LinkIt to be available in multiple languages for our multilingual families? That's a very good question.
That is a very good question. I know that there is an internal mechanism that we have to translate reports as necessary. And at parent request, I do not know if LinkIt itself does the translation internally, but I can find out.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Any other questions?
I did have my hand up. So,
Okay.
and I know you're going through I don't want to stop the presentations. I'm trying to get to the end, but you made a point about the intervention. So I know that they're like, I guess, common assessments where you have like kind of benchmarking, right? Beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year. You said there could be intervention. I guess my question is, if someone's falling behind, is that where there will be intervention? Like we are now planning because of this testing, because of the data, the tests are saying that we need to intervene now, and this is what we need to do. It's not like we're building a plan out for a few months. We are going to go there now, and is that the plan? Is that what we're doing?
Yes, that is the plan and the expectation. Primarily because the longer that you wait, the wider the gap gets, right?
Right.
So the universal screeners themselves, FastBridge, it will tell us whether a student is no risk, meaning that they're on grade level and they are where they should be, whether there's some risk and what that risk might be, or whether they're high risk. And for our students that are some risk and high risk, we typically take a look at their data profiles and determine what kind of support they need and put plans in place to support them in that way. So the idea is to provide the intervention prior to it becoming a need for an evaluation for special education, for example. Some students will respond to different types of instruction or instruction with higher frequency or a different type of material. And we're trying now to catch that ahead of the curve so that we're not over identifying students on the back end.
And the last thing I'll say, I know you're going through your presentation. This all what it sounds like to me, and I know you're going to kind of review this, but it all sounds like we're teaching to tests. And I'm not saying that we are. This is what it sounds like to me. We're teaching to specific tests, specific assessments, specific benchmarks, and all students don't learn the same way. So how are we kind of bridging all that with this, new grading system, what we're doing with the curriculum, and overcoming the fact that some students do not perform well on tests, but may perform well in some other area. So is there like an alternative to a common assessment or a benchmarking test where we can say, hey, this student, really gets it, even though they're not performing well on a test? Because I'm hearing a lot of tests and data, but these kids, they're not all going to follow the same mold, right? So I'm not hearing anything that's creative or outside the box. It's just you know numbers, and I'm not sure if I yeah
No, you're right on, Mr.
yeah
Diggs. And here's the thing about it, right? Education is all of this lingo. But when we say assessment, we don't necessarily mean test. And I think that that can be confusing for families because, yes, our universal screeners are actual tests. However, a common assessment doesn't necessarily have to be a multiple choice test or an essay test. It could be a presentation. It could be a written, I don't know, a persuasive essay that a student has written in high school. It could be a commercial that someone has put together for one of the high school digital media classes. There are different types of assessments, and as we are moving through and really looking at our grading guidelines and our curriculum, I'm going to be quite honest, it's something that we are working with our teachers around because I think a lot of people teach the way they were taught, right? So years and years and years ago, all we did in school was really sit down and take tests. But we are seeing now that that is not the only way to assess whether a student has learned what you want them to learn. So as we're getting better about that and actually rewriting curriculum to match differing expectations in terms of how students present to us what they have learned, you'll see that the common assessments that go into LinkIt might look a little different. You might see a score and a rubric instead of an actual multiple choice test that has, 89 out of 100.
Okay, and now I see Sayura, you have your hand raised and you also have a question in the chat. Do you want to come off mute and just share what your question is?
Yes, good evening, and thank you for meeting with us tonight. So I want to ask about the 70% of the children's grades being summative assessments. I do understand the reason for the common assessments. I'm glad to hear that. And a second part of that is when will the new curriculum be available? And I was wondering how come that wasn't the start to raise the expectations for students so that they are ready for the next phase, whether it be middle school or high school. It's something that I've had a concern about for several years and complained about for several years. For example, I'm a principal at an elementary school in the school district of Philadelphia. And I noticed when my daughter was in fifth and sixth grade, the novels that she was reading, my students were reading a year earlier. So I would have her practice over the summer. So what she was reading in fifth grade, she read in fourth grade because I gave it to her because my kids were reading it in fourth grade. So it's a concern that I made the principals aware of many years ago that it seemed like the curriculum was not rigorous enough. And then I think the teachers are doing a phenomenal job, though. I think they're doing a wonderful job. Um, I can't commend the teachers enough in terms of them trying to make this work. But I don't think that the parents had an idea well ahead of time that this was going to happen. And I questioned my own daughter tonight just to give feedback, who's in the seventh grade. And I've had two other children come through Cheltenham School District who are now in college or a college graduate. And they got a great education, but not necessarily, they took AP classes and all of that. But the 70% is really, really steep. And I did my own research looking at educational journal articles and cannot find one article that states that summative assessments are a positive thing for children in K to 12 education, especially with this heavy weight of 70%. So I'm just wondering how come um, the start of this was not with a different curriculum, and when will the new curriculum be available? And then also, is there any chance that the 70% will go away, or just be lowered to like maybe 30%, which is standard? And I know I'm asking a lot of questions. I just don't want to forget. And then I'm just wondering how come this wasn't piloted, or was it piloted to do maybe with one class, or to start it in high school versus starting throughout the whole school district?
I'm thinking we probably need a whole separate session just on the curriculum piece,
Mm-hmm.
because curriculum is actually a written plan of how you teach the standards over the years,
Mm-hmm.
right? What we have been doing is not just rewriting the curricular piece, but we've been adopting new instructional materials.
Mm-hmm.
So we just this year adopted 6th through 12th grade mathematics. So we have all new textbooks, new digital platform for 6th through 12th grade mathematics. And we also did K to 12 science, because the Pennsylvania Department of Education rolled out all those steel standards, all the new standards. So we now have new science materials, and we have a STEM class, because the steel standards, the science, technology, engineering, ecological sciences standards are vast. So we made space to teach children through K to 5 STEM some of the engineering pieces. And we also adopted the new K to 5, K to 12 science materials.
Mm-hmm.
We are in process right now looking at K to 5 English language arts materials. And a lot of that is due to the Pennsylvania Department of Education requiring structured literacy moving forward. So there's a lot of change afoot. And what I would encourage all of you to do is to attend or watch some of the educational affairs presentations, because in our educational affairs committee meetings, we actually cover quite a bit of this because it is so intensive. They're long meetings. They're usually on their, I guess, the third Tuesday of every month at 7 p.m. But we talk about the adoption. We talk about um, how we're rewriting curriculum and curriculum cycles. We do progress monitoring on the comprehensive plan and the strategic plan. We use Ed Affairs really to report out on a lot of data, and also report out on where we are in terms of making progress in this curricular piece.
So,
We are
What
also experimenting with, well, not experimenting with, there is an educational blueprint now on the district's website that has course descriptions for our courses. And the next step is to start adding the actual curriculum documents to it as they are under review and moving forward.
what about the marking guidelines, the
Yeah.
70%?
So the 70-30% grading guidelines at the secondary level came out of a realization last summer that the middle school and the high school did not have the same grading guidelines. And there were a series of meetings with administrators and teachers around what those guidelines could look like. The 70% in terms of summative is supposed to be a mix of summative assessments. It is not a singular summative assessment. So if we are seeing that it is a singular summative assessment, I would encourage you to reach out to your principal or to my office because that was not the intent of the guidelines.
I'm
I'm
sorry,
I'm
just so
I'm
good.
I'm not seeing that. And in going to the PTO meetings, I know some PTO people who have come to the meetings have asked for some of these questions to be asked. So I'm speaking for myself and on behalf of other people. It's not that it's one test, and in speaking to teachers, I understand you're saying that you guys met with teachers, but from my experience, I've talked to teachers who do not necessarily support this.
Mm.
And they are feeling stressed about it because in knowing their students, they understand the pressure that it's putting on them. There are parents who stress that their students have or their children have IEPs and are not necessarily good test takers. So I'm sure that they're being given instruction on their instructional level and that it's being modified, but still just the pressure of the testing, like Mr. Diggs talked about earlier. Um, the teachers are now saying that they have to give more assignments so that the 70% is not so hefty if the children are not doing well on one or two assessments. So they're studying and they're being given more and more and more assignments. And I hear it because I have my daughter's email connected to my phone. I don't know how many dings a day of assignments being added to Google Classroom. It's a lot. So I hear what you're saying that it should be a mix, but my question is there any chance of the 70% being modified? And I understand that you're saying that the grading system needed to be aligned from middle school to high school, but I guess I'm asking too, why does it have to be the same from middle school to high school, especially if you guys are getting instructional materials that are standards based? And then you should be preparing the students for high school, once they get in seventh or eighth grade, but not necessarily with grading. It's with the instructional materials and then standards-based instruction and also rich professional development, which many of the teachers said that they were not getting um, as it relates to this grading system, this new grading system.
I will have a conversation with Dr. Scriven and we'll talk to my team about that, but I can give you a data point that I think is really important. We actually have seen a decrease in D's and F's since we implemented the 70/30. So I think there's multiple sides to every story, and we probably need to do a little more digging because I am curious as to how this is manifesting in different places.
I did want to just bring up too, and in the interest of time, I'm going to ask if we can actually move through the presentation at this point. But I did want to mention, I think there has been quite a bit of confusion around the 70/30. My understanding, based on what was shared during back to school night, was that 70%, the 70% summative needed to be tests and quizzes. Um, my understanding now is that the 70% includes tests, labs, projects, presentations, and other types of assessments. So I don't know if that was a point that needed clarifying and maybe it was not shared accurately. My recommendation is that the district, if possible, put together not just more maybe education and professional development for the teachers, but also if that truly is a point of clarification, but also maybe a data sheet that parents can easily see what is included and the reason why. And if it's not only test, then maybe that can be like put in writing so that everyone understands and is on the same page there.
It does exist, and I will discuss with Dr. Scriven about actually posting it.
Okay.
And it does
Thank you.
delineate very clearly what you just said.
Okay, thank you. And so I see one more, but any data that supports the 70/30 system. Okay, so this question is around if there is data supporting the 70/30 system. And then that'll be our last question before we go back into the presentation.
Yeah, we actually have been taking a look at the percentage of D's and F's that have been put onto children's report cards over the first semester. And then as we are, well, each marking period in the first semester and then the end of semester grades. And we actually saw that we had a decline in the percentage of students that were getting D's and F's based upon this new system. So there is some data that we have there. I think, though, that I would like to go back to my team and have a deeper conversation and pull some additional data points, and it might be something that we can come back to another meeting with.
I I just one thing. I understand that the reduction of D's and F's, and the summative and formative, I think it's the 70/30, right? Um, so and this is me, I have two daughters in Cedar Brook, and they're in seventh grade, and some days they have, they'll blast through a test, some days they'll get a D on a test, right? But they're allowed to make up information and then increase that grade. Could that be a part of why you're seeing less D's and F's? Because the teachers are trying to do their best to kind of get these kids, because it's so punitive, the extra like to get that grade increased. Are you seeing that the teachers are actually giving them another opportunity to do well on the test a second time? Are you seeing that as well in the data, or you're not
That's,
seeing
and
that?
the teachers always had given students the opportunity to make up tests or to retake them. That's not new
No,
in
I'm not saying
terms
it's new, but I'm saying that there's a pattern of practice to have that student, what let's say it's 20% of the test they failed, go and retake that, right? Because it's so punitive. I've talked to, just like Ms. Douglas said, I've talked to the teachers. They have to do this so that they don't fail these students. So even if the data is, you're looking at the data points, again, the numbers say one thing and they do tell a story, but it may not be the whole story. If you have teachers
you're right
who are
about that.
wholesale, like, hey, let me bend this curve a little bit because the students, and I have good, my students are excellent students. I mean, I'm biased because they're my daughters, right? But but I know they're good students. But if they're getting a D on a test, there's something. When I see a D with my girls, there's something that I'm not sure about this, or a C even, right? I'm like, what's going on here? And it's one of them is test anxiety. That's why I brought it up. The other one is, she can blow through her class and not have to really study. But what I'm saying is teachers are making exceptions and doing some things outside, coloring outside the lines to
Hmm.
get these kids, to not fail, is what I'm saying.
And I
So
and
the
I,
data
I
might say
I'm going to be
something.
quite honest, Mr. Diggs.
Mhm.
Part
It's
of what
always
brought
happened. I get it.
Yeah, well, part of what brought this about is we were seeing vast differences in how teachers were grading students. How many
I'm not
assignments
sure.
were given, how
Yeah,
many
yeah.
tests were given.
Mhm.
And in the attempt to norm all of this, like there is going to be a period where we have to kind of flex through this, but I have a lot of curiosity too around rigor, around making sure we are teaching grade level standards to students,
Well, I,
whether teachers are following the grading guidelines as they have been explained and PD'd in,
well,
or whether the messaging that's coming out of these classrooms
yeah.
is
Uh,
specific to certain classrooms or whether this is a district-wide problem. So I'm
right.
definitely going to dig because I wouldn't have known it was a problem unless you guys had brought it to me.
Well,
But now
I,
I'm definitely going to dig and take a look.
and this last I'll say, because I know we got to go through this presentation, but it seems as though the children are being punished for the fact that the students aren't standard across the board. How are the teachers being held accountable to the standard? If you're saying that it's all over the board, well, why are they all over the board? Or
It's
why
not
are they
all
not
over the
being
board now.
now they're not? Well, they were before, and now we changed that so the kids are being it's punitive for our kids. Why was it not punitive for the teachers and hold them accountable instead of changing everything the way that we did? Why? So how are they being held accountable?
The teachers are being held accountable, but the children also have to learn to the standards. And I think that's part of what we're seeing in terms of the difficulty that some children are having. Quite honestly, we increase the rigor.
Yeah. And I'm going to ask that we actually pause
Yeah.
and move on with the presentation. I think it's a very good discussion, but we do have limited time, and so I'm going to ask that that we that we continue.
Absolutely. And I can get through the next section pretty quickly because Some of these questions we've already answered in terms of what data points are most important and why. For the district in particular, we really look at the state assessments, the on-track measures, and the college and career readiness because obviously, again, as a governmental entity, that's what's required of us. But we also look at different things, and you'll see that in the next couple of slides. But for your children, the things that are in LinkIt are going to be very helpful to you, along with the things that are in Power School, because Power School is going to have your grades, your attendance, and the different things that go into making sure that you get a holistic picture of where your child is. So, for those who want to take a deeper dive, and this is more of an activity for us as a group, what other points would be good indicators? And I would like you to come off mute and just volunteer. What other data points do you think we should be looking at as a district? Any ideas? Any thoughts?
Hello,
Yep.
Yeah.
can we speak? So I wanted to know as part of, I guess, the outcome, right? So we have, the performance. My concern mainly is on the resources available, for improvements or, how efficient are, we're not efficient, how effective are the results in terms of dictating, a child's success rate. So in other words, even if you're getting the 70%, right? If you're scoring really high relative to the 70%, like what are the measures for success, right? As part of that outcome? Is it that they're just getting in colleges or are they doing well in college? And I don't even know if we even have access to that data, right? How they're performing. And maybe if it's a grade over grade, meaning if they're doing well in ninth grade relative to eighth grade or, 11th versus 10th, are we able to draw any correlation between how they're scoring, right? In other words, if there's a child who's actually not doing as well in the summative, right, in a 70 versus the 30, right? Can we draw any correlations from, from that scoring? If you can't, then to the point that was made earlier, you're just, teaching kids to take tests and do well on these tests or whatever the performance is, but you're not really getting the intended outcome. If the intended outcome are the data points that you had mentioned before, right, then okay, right, we're seeing, kids go into college, we're seeing kids do, better in whether it's entrance exams, right, SATs or the like. But if we're not seeing the correlation, then are we getting the value, that we're seeking? I hope that made sense.
Yes, you're looking for a correlative relationship to be established between grades and mastery of standards.
Correct. And also, I guess it's more specifically on how the framing of the summative is, right? With the 70 to 30. The question, I keep hearing a lot of questions on why 70 and why nothing less, right? So if 70 is, the benchmark, the question is should that even be the right distribution between the two?
Mm-hmm.
And does the data actually support that that's the right distribution between the two?
I see other hands raised for suggestions.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for leading this discussion, and I appreciate the way that you have been very responsive to the comments, the questions, and the like. In regards to the question that you have posed, and even based upon things that were already stated previously in this evolution that you stated, I heard you share that a lot of times teaching is based upon how people have been taught. And so it is a process, right, to evolve and to make these changes. And so I think that what I would love to see is more prioritized focus on different learning types,
Mm-hmm.
right? Ways of organizing curriculum that would prioritize the beauty of each student and that would help the lessons to help the students understand that learning is a lifelong process. It is not to be um, focused on numbers for a system, but that the children are human beings with a purpose that we as I'm also an educator in addition to being a parent, our priority is to empower the students to understand their value in the world. And it's not about trying to get numbers in terms of money and having them do these shifts and catering to what it is to get us money without really priority. How do we have lessons that teach everyone in the classroom that they matter, that they have a value, and that they have something inside of them, that the lessons that we're teaching is prioritizing, invoking that, and teamwork, where there's a focus on camaraderie and valuing people, including the teacher. Because to me, what needs to be essential in the times that we're living in now is how do we honor our humanity?
Thank you, Sharice. That was very
I,
well said.
yes, and I love that. And there's so many things that we probably should be doing as a group, right? Because we've been doing a lot of work around the portrait of a graduate, and that speaks very heavily to the portrait of a graduate, right? Like, I think in a perfect world, you have both. You have children that are seen and heard and valued and known and love education and love being engaged in school. But we also have, as a community, defined this mix of things that we want to teach our students to help them to develop into their best version of themselves, right? And data is a piece of that, but it's not everything. Um, and I think it's important to actually acknowledge that, right? Like this session tonight is about data, but it's a piece of all of what we're doing as a district to really think about how our kids can be the best that they can be.
Absolutely. And I see
Thank you.
we have two other hands raised, and then we'll continue. So first is Julian Saavedra.
Yep. Hey, Dr. Savage.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for everything that you've done during this presentation so far. I really appreciate the clarity. One, to your question, one specific thing that I think a lot of us would like to see is a concrete evaluation of the career-based and or work-related experiences that students in grades 6 through 12 are having. So is there some sort of qualitative measure to see how many experiences and or exposures our students are having from middle school all the way through? And then, from a quality standpoint, evaluating which ones are leading to specific outcomes. Like I know there are different apprenticeship programs, there's a dual enrollment in the high school, all of those things. So just wondering, what does that look like for a student in the middle school going all the way through to grade 12 in a Cheltenham school district? And how would we be able to evaluate if they're working or not? And then secondly, to that point, looking at I know the 70-30 conversation, there's a lot of things to dig into it. My question around that also, though, is does this mean that criteria-based learning is no longer a thing? Like I know that we had PBL as an option, which was a criteria-based option for some students. Where does that stand in this new iteration of evaluation?
Yeah, PBL still does exist.
Okay.
So we do have, and again, this is really specific to the different especially at the high school level, the different courses, because the content of each course sometimes will dictate what the summative assessment will look like. And I think, and forgive me if I'm misinterpreting this, but what I'm hearing is that we have certain core content areas where people are leaning heavily into the grading guidelines and using tests as those summative assessments. But I'm not necessarily hearing that from some of these other content areas that might not be core. So, for example, it's not like we're giving art tests. They're doing projects in art, and that is less of an issue for families because it doesn't show up on the report card the same way. So there's some additional investigating I have to do around how this is manifesting.
Got it.
Thank you. And then next we have Joyce.
Hi. I'm curious whether there are any data points that connect existing programs that are successful with students who are successful. For example, I'm the parent of 3 Cheltenham students, 1 senior, 2 graduates, and my senior has participated in the music programs at Cheltenham since 3rd grade. She was in a pilot program at Winco where they started band in 3rd grade rather than 4th grade, and she continues to be part of all of the music programs at school. And I know that there's a lot of data to suggest that students who participate in arts are more successful academically and are more engaged in their school as a community. Do we have any data points that would give us hard evidence to back that up so that we could continue to strengthen and support music programs and art programs in the district as a way of improving, academics and engagement and a sense of community? And, for example, I wonder how many families are aware of the fact that our band program provides instruments. So students you don't have to be able to financially invest in an instrument in order to participate in the music program at the high school. And if I recall correctly, at the elementary and middle school levels as well. And, I wonder whether we have data that makes the connection between academic performance and band and theater and art programs that would allow us to harness some of those programs.
I'm not sure whether we have any internal correlation, like any internal data points that have been correlated and can prove the outcome.
Yeah.
But we have paid close attention to that because there's a lot of external research that says exactly as you're saying. So a good example of something that we've done recently is, pushing instrumental music down into 4th grade and restoring that band program at the elementary schools. So there are things that we can think about and different points that we can pull together around that so we can take a deeper dive.
Because I would imagine it's pretty easy to identify. I don't know the degree to which this information is private, but to identify the students who have participated in the music programs or the arts programs in general and what their performance has been
academically.
I mean, my anecdotal experience is that it absolutely improves academic performance. But that's
my anecdotal experience as well. I have an 8-year-old that plays the electric guitar and he's brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce, for the question. And I third that with my girls as well. And then next, I think we had Abby with a hand raise.
Yep. Hi.
Hi.
Abby.
I'm Abby Fishman. I teach at Cedar Brook, but I also have a senior at the high school and a daughter who graduated. And I wanted to just speak to what Julian said, because 2 of the things that he brought up, the career-based education and the project-based learning program, I really believe my daughter did the project-based learning program, and I believe it got her into the school she got into and is making her successful in college. I got a certification on a sabbatical a few years ago to do co-op ed. I really feel like we should be pushing those programs more. Dr. Savage, all the things that you have done since you've come in, I think have excited me as the things that you want to promote in the district. But unfortunately, we've had so much change in leadership that I feel like, I pushed PBL so much like 2 years ago for my kids based on pushed it for my students based on my own child's experience, and then they like cut it. And I just feel like every time I feel like some things get momentum, we've got changes and it loses it, and it's a little frustrating, because I really think that there's something special about the fact that we offer the PBL program and the diversified education program at the high school that sets us apart. And I just feel like I don't want to lose steam with those things when, it's constantly, we're constantly, I don't know what to say to my students because I don't know if it's still going to be there. And I think that that's, again, nobody's fault. It's just something that, as from a teacher's perspective, I was pushing PBL with my kids the other day, and a lot of them don't know about it. And, I know we've put out information, but it's just, I think that piece is frustrating when there's some things that I think Cheltenham does that are really unique to Cheltenham that could really, like, I think PBL should be a program that kids are fighting for spots for, honestly. But they just don't know enough about it. And the teachers keep changing in the program because the signups change because I don't know. I know I'm kind of going off the rails here, but again, when Julian spoke, I just wanted to back him up on those things because I think that also speaks to the 70-30 and kids that don't, aren't the testing kids. And just one more thing about the 70-30, we do put like projects. There is some discretion amongst us in terms of what goes into that 70.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I'm not to say, I do think that probably in the younger grades more that teachers use some of their professional wiggle room to kind of say this should be this should be summative and count towards that. But it does get a little some gray areas when teachers do it differently, which is really what we're trying to avoid and keep things, if you have teacher A and teacher B that teach the same thing, your kid should have the same expectations. So it is something it's new, we're working on it. But I just wanted to speak to that too. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Great question. And then, Lewis, I see that you had a question, and then it looks like you have to leave. So if
Yes,
you
yeah,
just go, and I
yes,
promise
yeah.
this is the last question.
So very quick, just three quick comments, one question, but they're very quick. I have them succinct. Three concerns. The 70-30 split from both an intellectual and academic perspective, while I understand the data points that have been mentioned earlier, when 70% of the grade is tied to bigger summative tests, major writing projects, a single rough assessment, illness, anxiety, unstable home conditions, really can disproportionately tank a marking period. That's the first critique I have. The second one is it can also undervalue practice and feedback loops. Formative work is where students learn the learning, drafting, trying, revising, getting feedback, building stamina. A 30% ceiling can communicate practice does not matter, which can reduce engagement with the very work that improves summative performance. And the main
I have no idea because I was trying to figure that too.
and the main And the main question that I have, and the main concern I have, is about how neurodiverse students and other students that learn differently, that have test taking anxiety, how they are being considered. Because what we've seen this year at Cedarbrook in the eighth grade, that it has been disproportionate and it's been inequitable. And it's been disproportionate and equitable because many teachers are doing different things. They did not come into the school year with a real adequate plan. And I know this because I came to back to school night and I began to talk to teachers when they began to present this to, and many of them couldn't even answer my questions about how they were going to diversify their summative approaches in the classroom. So there are a number of different concerns that I have, particularly as it relates to equity, but also the two critiques that I mentioned earlier. And I would love to have those addressed as you move forward in the presentation. Thank you.
I can take because I know you have to go, but I'll take your 2 points in turn. So the first part with the summative, well, let me back up even further. I think there's a larger consideration that we have to have a conversation with the administrative team over at Cedarbrook around is whether we are grading for completion of a work, of an assignment, or whether we are grading for mastery of a learning target. Because I think, honestly, I think just listening to the complaints, I think that that might be where some of this is coming from because students are getting more and more work because they are not actually mastering the work that they're getting. And it is an attempt by the teachers to give students things so that give them assignments so that they don't necessarily fail. But I'm struggling right now with where is it and how are we getting the students to actually learn and understand the content so that this doesn't become a the loop that we're in right now. So I think that there's a deeper conversation that we just have to have over at Cedar Brook around what the difference is between the two. I think they're very well normed on that at the high school, but you guys have given me some homework and I will be very astute about completing my homework.
Thank you, Dr. Savage. And so now I think we have 30 minutes left. I think we can move forward with actually sharing some of the data. And thank you, everyone, for your questions and comments. This is a very good discussion, and this is exactly what we wanted. So I appreciate the engagement. Okay.
Absolutely. So I wanted to just give you a sense of the other types of data that we do review internally as a district and the types of data that we are trying to figure out how to make live and public. So we look at a number of different data points over the course of a year on a regular cycle. And it's a lot of what people don't necessarily know we look at, right? But things that people have raised as being important. So we do look at how many students are in dual enrollment. We look at the demographics around that and access to that. We look at Eastern, we look at honors and AP courses, and we also look at the percentage of students that are gifted and special education, and sometimes twice and thrice exceptional, and how they are being served. And we organize these data points in a number of different ways because we are very succinctly trying to make sure that we're spotting any issues, trends, or concerns that we need to address specifically with a particular student, a classroom teacher, a larger school-wide trend, or a district trend. So we do bucket the work and we look at these different data points in different ways. We also look at attendance, behavior data, serious incidents, and suspensions, and we organize that in different ways as well. Because I shouldn't say obviously, in my mind, in my professional mind, in my personal mind, I don't think you can separate these data points. When we talk about a holistic view of a child, if you don't look at all of the data points together, oftentimes you might miss an underlying cause of a manifesting problem. So, for example, sometimes we come across students and we see that they're not doing too well academically, but when we look at the full picture, we see that their attendance is not where we would like it to be, and it's affecting the academics. So there's the push and pull around the different pieces of data that we're looking at and how we can get a more full and holistic picture around each individual student. Now, just from a data lens and some of the information that we intend to make more public as we are building out different landing pages on our website, I wanted to bring up for you some of the data that we look at internally that we actually pull from LinkIt so that you can see how it's presented and you can see what we are trying to look for in terms of spotting trend data. So here you'll see Keystone scores.
Dr.
And
Savage, I'm
yeah,
sorry to interrupt. It's appearing very small on the screen. For
mhm.
anyone looking, you can click the three dots next to Dr. Savage's screen. There's three little dots you can click and enlarge the slide if you need to. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Funding data points. Let's see that in the chat. So this is small, but again, we're going to make this deck public. But you can see that we actually look at Keystone data, PSSA data, both ELA and mathematics, and these are high-level summaries that help us to really spot some trends and understand what's going on over a period of time. So on this slide to the left, you will see that this is the percentage of students that have scored proficient and advanced in different Keystone tests. So here we have literature, We have middle school algebra, high school algebra, and then high school biology. And for us, as we are reviewing this data, it actually gives us a good starting point to really think about where we need to make improvements and where we need to start in terms of looking at some of the refresh in our curricular materials and our instructional materials. I will point out that this data set is a very important one because obviously the pink bars are the 2020 to 2021 data, and that was the pandemic. So that's the year that students started school but didn't finish. And then the following year is the year that we had a whole lot of, just differentness in terms of how we educated children.
One quick question, and maybe you'll get into this, but I guess the middle school scoring being significantly higher, does that just has to do with the fact that the material maybe not be as rigorous, right? It's not as difficult by the time they get to high school, or is there?
Actually, it is the same exam. And what we have done in the past is there are a specific set of algebra readiness criteria
Mhm.
that we have used to determine which students get algebra in middle school versus everyone that gets it in ninth grade. So what you see for middle school algebra are typically students that are advanced in mathematics.
Interesting.
Isn't it interesting? Very
Thank
interesting.
you.
Over on the right-hand side, you see an achievement level distribution. And this is a really good one for us because this actually tells us how many students are scoring below basic, basic, proficient, or advanced in different cohorts over the different years. And it gives us a sense too of what that spread looks like on the different Keystone exams. And Julian, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I was just looking at the number of kids who tested between 23-24 and 24-25. Was there a drop in enrollment, or who was testing? Did that change?
Sometimes we have students taking tests twice. So that N is the number of students that, well, yeah, it is the number of students who have, it is not the number of students, it's the number of tests that were given. There you go.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
Sorry
That's what I
about that.
was.
I had to
Yeah,
get my words
that's
right.
okay.
That's what the N was.
Got it.
So you do see that there's difference year over year because sometimes we have students that take it in the spring, in the winter Keystone, and then we'll take it again in the spring if they haven't passed it or if they're not satisfied with their score.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And is this a cumulative of both fall and spring testing?
Correct. Winter and spring testing.
I mean, winter and spring testing.
Yep,
Got it. Thank you.
absolutely.
And I'm so sorry, Dr. Savage. I'm gonna ask the same question maybe a little differently. The middle school scoring, because again, I'm looking on the right.
Mm-hmm. Right here and right here.
Yes, I'm just looking at just the performance of, advanced and how it drops precipitously, right? You're saying that it's the same test, but it's given to advanced students. I guess maybe I just can't see it on the screen, but uh, does the population reduce versus the middle school population? You said it's advanced students who are in middle school taking these tests, right?
Right. So
Um,
typically we see that we have anywhere between 30 and 45 or 50-ish
mhm,
middle school students that take algebra. And that's a mix of
mhm.
seventh and eighth graders. But
Okay.
then in ninth grade, everybody who has not taken algebra in the middle school then takes algebra in the ninth grade. So that's why you see the numbers get so much higher over here in terms of this N, because you have more students that take it.
Got it. That's what it's diluted over a greater number. That's what I was looking for. And also, yeah, you're saying that it's students who hadn't taken it versus those who have already taken it. So it's a
Correct.
completely different population of students.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. Novice, did I say your name right?
Yes, you did. Thank you. Is it fair to put the middle school algebra in this data set to look at it? Because it's very misleading.
It
I mean,
is.
most of the time you're talking about gifted. So all the other stuff is general population, and that one data set is gifted students. And that doesn't really give a valid picture. It makes it very confusing.
It
Why
does.
is that added? Why is that even in this particular data set? It would
We
make more
actually
sense. I would think, to me, it would make more sense if you put it with some other gifted data, with other stuff that they're doing, so you could see it, but not with the general population. But go
Well,
ahead.
we don't, because gifted programming is very much like special education programming and they have individualized plans. This is the only data set that we have for these algebra students. And not all of these algebra students are gifted. Some of them do not have GIEPs, but they qualified because they have a prowess in math.
Right,
Um,
I understand that.
yeah, but part of why we include it is because we didn't want to lose those 45 kids.
Yeah. But I think to that point though, it needs to be normalized, right? Like if it's a
But you can't
subset.
normalize it. I mean, so these are the kids. These are the kids who are like advanced. They're taking math 2 levels ahead of everybody else, and of course they're going to do better because the rest of them. Some of them are seventh graders who their peers are taking seventh grade math and they're taking algebra. That's why I don't understand how it even gives us a knowledge of anything that's happening there versus everybody else.
But
What
their
are we
scores
supposed
are
to
reported in
Their
the
scores are reported, but what are we supposed to see from that? From when I'm looking at it, it looks like, oh, in middle school, everybody does fine, then everybody just drops off and everybody does bad. That's not what I'm supposed to glean from this graph, right? This data set. So having that in there, what is that supposed to tell me?
The data set for us as a district actually tells us where students scored. We don't glean anything more than that from it unless we're going to use it to actually drive instruction. But I can share with you that part of the conversation around math in particular and algebra in middle school versus high school is the difference between how they're doing in the middle school versus how they're doing in the high school. Is this a conversation that, the board needs to think through and have around when we teach algebra? Is it that everybody should take it in the eighth grade? Is it that everybody should take it in the ninth grade? And I think having the data available for that to be digested and to discuss and be discussed publicly is an important thing because if I pull it off the slide and you don't see it, you'll never know to ask the question.
Was this data the data used to determine that algebra should be taught the entire year of ninth grade?
That decision was made well before I got here, so I'm not quite sure who made it or how.
Okay, thank you.
But you did state though that even with the 537 kids, that includes, some of the gifted kids as well, right? So yeah, and I think you also said that even in middle school, it's not just gifted students. It's just a smaller subset of kids who took the exam. And I guess if normalizing it would be, again, I don't even know how you would, right? Because again, it's only a small subset of the data. Whatever that subset was, if you carried it over year, it would then maybe give you some indication as to whether or not those kids have, at the very least, retained. If it's the exact same test or just retaking it, right? It's not going to tell you, really much of anything else. But I agree. I think there just needs to be something that helps to baseline what you're seeing in middle school relative to what, again, you expect to see in high school. And unfortunately, you're just not able to draw that correlation right now with the data as it's presented.
right.
Yeah, because the students that do take it and score proficient or advanced in the middle school do not take it again in ninth grade.
Hmm.
So you're right about this correlation piece because that actually puts them onto a different math trajectory in terms of the next set of courses that they take. Because typically, when they go into ninth grade, they're looking at geometry or they might go into a different math elective. They're not going to take the algebra that everybody else is taking. But again, it's a data point and it's important for us to share it so that we can digest it and have conversations about it. But I do want to move on to the next slide, which is around the ELA PSSAs. And that is the wrong information, y'all. I'm sorry. Because this actually shows the number of students that are below basic instead of the students that are actually scoring proficient or advanced. So I'll have to correct that prior to putting it up on the website. But you can see on this side that it is the same kind of distribution data so that you can see how many students are proficient in advanced, as well as how many students are scoring basic and below basic over a 2-year cohort period. And again, the ELA PSSA is given in 3rd through 8th grade.
And this is just Cheltenham, right? There isn't anything with nothing with the neighboring school populations to see how these kids are doing relative to the other.
I have a
schools?
handout that I'll share that compares our district to comparable districts.
Thank you.
Yep.
And similarly, this is our math achievement data on the 3rd through 8th grade PSSA. And you'll see that the distribution here is very, very interesting. Honestly, a lot of school districts in Pennsylvania, especially after the introduction of the PA core in 2014, slid off in math. It is also very interesting that a lot of school districts now are starting to regain some of that footing in math, but now they're losing footing in ELA, particularly because we're introducing structured literacy, and it is literally going to be a learning curve for the teachers. We're going to have to teach teachers, once again, how to teach reading.
And the scale is 100, right? I'm sorry.
100%, yes.
Jeez, this is terrible. I'm sorry.
And Shelley, we actually do not track kids. We don't put students in tracks at the 3rd grade. And if that's something that you're seeing, I would please encourage you to call me.
That was a pretty standard practice in the past. I don't know if it's currently happening, but
it is not. No, it is not. It should not be. And if it is, I need to know immediately. All right. So I'm going to wrap up because I do want Ms. Rodwell Green to share her handout because I found it to be fascinating. But things that families can do at home, absolutely continue to have these conversations with your students. Check your Power School data, check your LinkIt data, talk to your kids about where they are. And also, we're here as a partner for you. Reach out and have those conversations. Reach out and ask those questions. Your classroom teacher obviously is your first point of contact because they're the one that sees your student every day. But if you have additional data that you would like to dig into or you have additional questions, we can always support you at the Office of Education and at Central Administration as we are, digging through some of these data points. I also am very interested in perhaps coming back and having some additional conversations with this group around data because this was fascinating for me. And I think that there is a lot of work that we have to continue to do as a district around not just understanding our data, but also nailing down exactly what the data means and how we want to use it. So we already did a bunch of Q&A. What's coming next? You will see from this Office of Ed in particular, some public-facing dashboards. We're trying to figure out right now how to make this kind of data digestible and then put it on the website and put it out there for families and for stakeholders so that people can see it in ways that are just easier to navigate. You saw a lot of data tonight. Future Ready is one piece of it, but also as we are really coming into our own around the portrait of a graduate, what metrics are we going to assign to that and what data points are we going to put there, right? Because that portrait of a graduate speaks more and more to who we want our kids to be and not just these snapshots around how they're scoring on assessments. So I really think that we are in a good place and we're getting ready to move into a better place in terms of making sure that not only do we know what the data is, but we are putting it out there for people to ask questions about.
great.
Hey, Ms. Rodwell Green, could I just jump in real quick?
Yes, I just see your hand raised, Dr. Scriven.
Yes,
Absolutely.
ma'am. First and foremost, I just wanted to thank you and definitely Dr. Savage. An additional next step, this is all in the spirit of continuous improvement. We are in the process of, in the month of March, where we're about to kick off the strategic planning process for our next 5-year plan. I just want to thank the parents that were on here. Your questions truly were thought provocative, and we will follow up. That's why we're here. Um, and your voice does matter. We need individuals to participate in our strategic planning committee. So please, if you reach out to Ms. Rodwell Green, if there's any interest, we'll also be sending out a district wide um, invite where individuals who are interested can share that there's a willingness to champion in this work with us. And I think just so many of your perspectives that you're bringing to the table here tonight can really be honored and help us really make sure that our next plan is one which is truly representative of our district as a whole. So just wanted to put that out there at this opportunity. So thank you both. Dr. Savage, as always, thank you. Great presentation. Truly appreciate it. Look forward to our impending conversations. Thank you, Ms. Rob Green.
Thank you, Dr. Scriven. And so with that, I'm going to just share my screen. And can you all see the guide? And Dr. Savage, thank you very much for reviewing all of that data. We may run out of time, so I just wanted to make sure that I took a second to thank you. And it would be great if you could come back and host another meeting with us. That would be wonderful. So this is a one-page guide that I just put together over the weekend. That it occurred to me that when I was thinking about how to compare ourselves with other districts, that proximity to our district might not necessarily be the best way to approach it. And so I just took a stab at pulling median home value data and use that as a starting point. And so you'll see highlighted here the districts that are Cheltenham, we're at 432.5, and I just took $50,000 value in either direction just to give us a ballpark. Okay, it's not a hard science to it, but these highlighted districts are the ones then that I use to go into the PA, the Future Ready PA Index, and compare to our district, because we would sort of make the assumption, whether valid or not, that we would have similarly resourced districts and that we should be able to have similar outcomes in some way, right? And so again, it's not perfect, but it's a starting point. I'll share this sheet with everyone, and then this is the comparison data. Okay, can you all see the screen? Yes,
Yeah.
no?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
perfect.
Yes.
No worries. So literally, and this is what Dr. Savage was showing. If you go on to the Future Ready Index, you can select Cheltenham, and then you can select whatever schools you like. So this is looking at our high school and the other township high schools. Okay, and so you'll see Abington, Bensalem, Neshaminy, Penridge, Pennsbury, Perkiomen Valley, and Wissahickon. And so Cheltenham is the first column, and our scores are highlighted. Okay, so, and this goes through pretty much all of those data points that are listed. So proficient, the percent proficient in or advanced on ELA literature, 55.8 for our high school, 70.8, 51.3, 63.9, 77.3, 71.9, 83, and 85.2. I mean, you get the kind of the gist here, right? So the percent proficient or advanced in math, algebra 1, here's our percentage, 40.7, 55.3 for Abington, 29 for Bensalem, 38 for Neshaminy, 53.9 for Penridge, 55.7 for Pennsbury, 66.7 for Perkiomen Valley, and 68.7 for Wissahickon. The percent proficient or advanced science biology was a waiver due to, I think, a change in the standards, if I'm not mistaken. And then the meeting annual academic growth expectations, you can see the numbers there, 74, 78, 77, 100, 100, 87, 100, 77. Okay, and it continues. Meeting annual academic growth expectations, 50, 100, 86, 100, 100, 71, 89, 74. I know I'm going through this quickly. I will share this file after. Okay, and then I'm just going to jump because I also looked at the middle schools. So here we have Cedarbrook, and we have the other. Now, some of these townships have more than one middle school. I just picked one randomly. There was no science to it, and shared, what was there on the website. Okay. And so you'll see here for Cheltenham, 48%. This is for percent proficient or advanced in ELA. Cedarbrook, 48.8. Ben Salem, 36.5. Neshaminy, 50.9. Abington, 52. Penridge, 55.7. Pennsbury, 63.9. Perkiomen Valley, 71.7. Wissahickon, 77.2. Okay, and you'll see, there's some obvious opportunities, I think, and areas of disparity, I'll say. That's as deep as I took this. I have I have looked at other, subsets, but I didn't necessarily put that together in a sheet. But when you go onto the website and compare, it's very easy to see where there are gaps. And then the final thing I wanted to share, this is comparing the data across our elementaries. So the first column is Cheltenham Elementary, Glenside, Myers, and Wyncote. And you'll see our numbers: proficient or advanced in ELA, 34.3% for Cheltenham Elementary, 55.9 for Glenside, 63.8 for Myers, and 60.1 for Wyncote. So I don't know if this is the only data that speaks to it, but when Dr. Savage was talking about the need to sort of normalize what is going on from one building to another, I do think that the data speaks to that a little bit. Okay, and again, I didn't want to dive into this too deeply, but I will just, again, I'll share it after the meeting, but I just want to sort of stop here and thank everyone for joining the call and for the open discussion. I hope you found the meeting valuable, and I will just pose that as a final question, and maybe you can drop in the chat a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you found the meeting valuable. Thumbs up if you thought it wasn't valuable. Thumbs down. And then if you would like to see a second meeting or continue the conversation, please let us know that in the chat as well.
And I'm sorry, can I ask just one last question regarding the data set, especially across the middle schools? Is it the same curriculum across all of, I'm sorry, not middle school, the elementary schools? Is it the same curriculum across all of those schools, or is it a different curriculum?
The elementary schools do have the same instructional materials, meaning they all use for ELA foundations and wonders. As we are writing curriculum, we are finding that people are pacing differently. And by pacing, I mean how much they are covering over the span of a school year. Some schools are getting all the way through it, and other schools are not.
Interesting. Okay. Thank you. This was very helpful.
Thank you. I'm glad. It looks like most people found this helpful, and I'm seeing for some that they would like a second meeting. So, Dr. Savage, I think you might be on the hook.
I'd be glad to come back.
All right, great. Thank you all for joining in, and I just, I want to just say that this topic, I know it's not an easy one, and we all feel very passionate about what needs to be done and how, but I will say that I very much appreciate everybody's desire to help our children, because at the end of the day, that's what we're all here for. And so I just want to thank you all for showing up. Thank you again, Dr. Savage, Dr. Scriven, and everyone who has commented or made questions. I think that this is a part of how we get to where we want to go, and and crack this nut of the achievement gap, right? Mm-hmm. That has existed here for very long, as well as some other things that we know our students can and should be doing. We all have their common interest in mind. So I just appreciate the community and the collaboration. And with that, I hope you all have a great evening and take care.
Take care. Stay warm, everyone.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.